Welcome to the second part of our July Hot Topics webinar. We'll continue the webinar by talking about reaching out to community partners in order to expand your programming. Now, as I went across the street, I saw many really inspiring things about the ways that groups were engaging their participants. They're utilizing community connections in order to make their programs work, and we're engaging the community with their garden boxes. Now I'd like to chat with you about engaging participants. The more successful groups are doing several things to keep their participants involved. They're scheduling regular visits, at least weekly, to the garden with their participants. And they're following up with them about things they're seeing in the garden in very positive but insistent ways, and checking in with gardeners who don't show. They're giving responsibility of specific gardens or plants to an individual or group to let them know that this garden is theirs, that they can do what they want with it, and the garden will be successful or not based on their actions. As you can see with this particular garden, you can see we have these great signs written up to let you know exactly who's working in that garden. The more successful groups are also actively questioning gardeners about their experience as a way to help them learn. With younger participants, probably the best way to keep them engaged in the garden is pairing garden chores with fun experiences. You'd love to water the gardens but hate weeding the gardens. So if you make weeding a requirement for watering, you're pairing a positive experience with one that's a little bit more onerous. On a larger scale, you can invite participants to the garden for games and social activities in addition to garden work. If they're playing tag or getting to know each other or doing fun events, and then go and do the gardening and come back and do other social activities, it makes it that much better of an experience for them. For your adult participants, if you're meeting with them regularly or doing check-ins, make time within that check-in to go and visit their garden and ask them how it's going. That way you can save them time and keep tabs on how the gardening is going as well. This particular group placed their garden in a playground. At the beginning, they were concerned that kids were going to be trampling the gardens and pulling out plants, and what they found was it wasn't the case. The gardens were very well cared for. They talked with the kids about what they were trying to do, the plants that were in the garden, what they could expect from those plants, and in the end it was a very positive experience because the kids became invested, and because it was a place where they could go and check on the gardens on their own, it made them that much more excited about all the different produce that was coming from the gardens. This is a phenomenal example of a group that had access to someone with some carpentry experience, and so in order to make it easier to interact with the garden, they put a bench in a raised bed right next to it so that as they're doing their work they could sit, they could talk, and have a great time in a really comfortable setting. This group did whimsical signage that I believe the participants themselves picked out as a way to create ownership in the garden, but also to personalize it in a really lovely way. As you can see, they built little walkways into the garden back to, I believe that's a small boot. It must be a fairy home. And they put lights in the garden as well. Another thing I saw successful groups do was utilizing community connections. Now with this group, they were approved for 6 garden boxes, which you can see there on the far row. But they had more participants than boxes, and so what they decided to do was go to a local garden center, let them know that they were part of the Garden Box program, and asked if they would be willing to donate similar supplies, and the garden center was happy to do so. As you can see in the background there, in addition to doubling the size of the Garden Box program, they also were able to set it up next to a larger ag program, so that as the participants are growing plants in the Garden Box, they also could see a larger reference to what they're doing and make connections between their growing these vegetable plants and the larger greenhouse growing a more commercial scale. And so oftentimes after they were done doing their chores with the garden in a box, they would go and tour the greenhouses as well. This is a group that used garden in a box in the rehabilitation programs. So not only were they getting fresh fruits and vegetables from the garden in a box, but their participants were using it to regain fine motor skills. The issue was the garden in boxes were too low to the ground, so many of these participants who were in wheelchairs weren't able to approach it. So what the group did was asked the local Boy Scout troop to build them this raised bed. The group came, set it all up, and their participants now enjoy a raised bed garden, and it's been working wonderfully. Here's a group that just went out and did it on their own. In addition to the garden in a box that you see in the forefront there, they went out and did buckets for tomatoes, and they did other raised beds to be able to expand the garden offering that they had for their participants. In addition to using community partners to benefit your gardens, you can use your gardens to reach out to community partners as well. This is a wonderful example of garden in a box that's located on the main city street and used to talk with people about healthy eating and gardening as a way to access fruits and vegetables. So you can see the 4 garden in boxes. This group had 10 overall. And what they did is we went out to the community and said, we've got these garden in boxes, we're looking to create a larger school garden. What can you do to be able to help support this? And the community really responded in kind, helping them build that workbench that you see right in the middle there, straw bale gardening, raised beds, mulch, and they really created a wonderful garden that was enabled in part by the garden in a box. Even if you're not actively reaching out to groups, you can always put garden in boxes in places where people are naturally going to be inclined to gather. So this group put it next to one of your free libraries where people bring and take books, so that if anybody's curious as they're picking up a book, they can learn a little bit about gardening, enjoy the garden, and really have a great experience. So thank you so much for listening. It was a pleasure chatting with you. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to follow up with me, and I'll get to them as best as I'm able. Thanks so much, and I will talk with you soon.